Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by TA Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So we talk regularly about the housing needs in Michigan, but what about the true affordability of housing and how it drives economic growth in our communities? Here to talk about the effects of housing affordability is the president of TA Forsberg, Mr. Brent Forsberg. Welcome back to the show, Brent.
Thank you, Chris. It is always a pleasure to be here. It's so exciting to be able to talk about housing and growth in Michigan.
Right. And it's complicated, right? I mean, I would imagine there are headwinds at all stages of our history, but when you talk about recent, and I'm talking, we're recording this in early 2005, but you've got interest rates higher than they've been in a generation, pretty much, right? You've got construction costs that are high. You've got labor shortages. Now we're talking about tariffs and all the things that go along with it. It's very hard to build a $250,000 home and sell it. So
it is. I mean, we're kind of in this perfect storm, right? And it's been building for a while. You go back to the early 90s. 75%-ish of new homes were affordable to the median income across the United States.
Okay.
We're down to under 23% right now of homes that are built, and that's eroding quickly. I mean, you've got everything that you mentioned, then we've got changes in codes and the pushing in the energy efficiency of housing, and then as you brought up right now, the tariffs are the interest from Michigan. Most of our lumber comes from across the border. And,
right.
So we're trying to figure out, as we're packaging all of this, how do we make housing affordable for people in the community to be able to buy? And, we all know about the housing shortages that have been going on for a couple of years now since interest rates have gone up. So there's just not inventory. So as communities try to grow, this is a serious problem. There's lots of research that shows GDP is tied to the availability of housing, because it's all kind of a circle, right? If there's not affordable housing, you can't bring in entry-level workforce or even mid-level workforce. And when it gets too expensive, that workforce leaves an area. And it's just kind of all over the country. So we're seeing this kind of disruption in the economy from it. Name a business that has a full working staff right now.
Right. And, you've touched on a lot of things there. And I want to just kind of drive the point home as a layperson. You're in it and you're dealing with it and you're trying to come up with solutions. But if you're a listener and you're thinking about, if you just go up and spend a week in Traverse City or Mackinac Island, you've got a need in the hospitality industry for people to change beds in hotels and to manage, the putt-putt golf course, off the road, and the waiters and waitresses and bartenders. And, it's a service, you go on vacation to experience resort kind of vacationing. And that requires a tremendous amount of reasonably low paying waged employees.
Yeah.
But if there's no housing for them, it's very hard to commute 45 miles for a $15 an hour job.
Yeah, especially in Michigan's winters.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. So I remember even talking to the people in Mackinac Island, and I mean, they've got like a kind of a compound, like they have their own housing for the main hotel there, where they house the people that work there. And then again, with some of the ability for people to come here from other countries and stuff being thwarted a little bit, everyone's struggling to have people like that.
And you think about that workforce. Those are the people that are most likely to establish their roots in an area. And when there's no moving change in housing and nothing available,
right,
they can't stay there. So it continues to compound that effect that, if the housing isn't there, then the families can't continue to grow in the area. So, it's a problem in Michigan as we've seen. And, when we look at all of our businesses, our industry, our agriculture, everybody's facing the same thing. One thing that we've looked at with this is think about how Michigan grew end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, was the businesses investing in the housing and the communities investing. We had this ecosystem of local capital that was able to stand that up in the area. And as we moved past World War II and went to globalization, and we saw these banks being bought out, these local banks, that ecosystem's gone in our communities. And that's one of the things that we're focused on, to how do we build this idea of a non-movable economy that has the local investment. And businesses are doing it out of necessity now. You see a lot of manufacturing companies saying, hey, how do I invest in housing to get people here? And that's what it's going to take. And, there's a lot of state programs that are starting to move that way too. And we're working in a lot of initiatives in a lot of communities to say, how do we stand these ecosystems up and make them stronger?
Well, and that's one of the reasons I love having you on the show, is because, you've committed yourself to educating yourself on the problem. So much so you're working on your PhD in this space, but you're also have a unique lens on how to find a pathway through, which I want to touch on once I finish giving thanks to our friends at Wagoner Financial. Are you ready to make smart financial decisions? Wagoner Financial offers a proven process for financial transformation, empowering individuals at all stages, whether you're just starting out, nearing retirement, or anywhere in between. Stop feeling unsure about your financial path. Wagoner Financial can help you undergo this financial transformation. Schedule a consultation today to discuss your individual needs and discover how Wagoner Financial can help you by visiting wagoner-financial.com or call them at 517-853-3367. So I understand you've created, and we've talked about it on this show, but it's got a brand now, the Pathway to Construction, right? Which is a kind of a conglomeration of people trying to help find their way through this, right?
Yeah, this is one of the pathways that's coming up in Michigan. It's really exciting. So, the Michigan laborers are part of this, and we're working with another strategic group, Nation Outside, and it's returning citizens that are being trained on residential construction jobs, and the Ingham County Land Bank is building an all-electric solar home, and that's the project, and it's supported by MISTA and Eagle, and had a lot of groups that said, hey, this is something we need to try, where we're starting with people that have very little construction experience.
Okay.
They're getting their safety cards, their training, and it's a practical application. So using the house as a laboratory where they're actually working alongside of crews that were already short on people, where they're getting trained and applying their training right there and building the entire home. And it's exciting because at the end of this, they'll be able to go into commercial construction and be part of the union and have a career pathway with pensions and everything that go along with that. And for the residential industry, what's really cool is we have a lot of turnover and it's hard to find residential construction labor. So here we're bringing people in that want to learn. We have a structured training program around it. They're working with local crews in the Lansing area to gain the skills, learn how to work safely on a job site, and then at the end of the program, they'll move on and we'll bring in another group.
Huh. Okay. So many hands involved in this, you mentioned. You talk about a training program. So that's the labor unions
Yes.
that are bringing these folks in. Who's paying for this house that's being built?
So this is done under the funds. It's got Ingham County funds in it from the Housing Trust Fund. It has a couple grants, and then the house will be sold. With this one, it will how it sells is it'll be a little bit less than what went into it, and we're working on that because of how it's pushing technology.
Right.
And it was set up as part of the grant that came out of the COVID era. And so it's exciting. It gave us the tool to test it and move forward. And it's on an incremental lot that went back on tax sale in the city of Lansing. So it's putting a new house in a neighborhood.
You said land bank, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and it's exciting. And that's what it's going to take to solve this problem. It takes all of our community coming together and saying, okay, here's the pain points that I have. How do we fix it? And we call it a community capital model. We use what's instead of just a traditional financing as capital, and thinking of that, excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
We look at it from a 5 capital structure. So you have that traditional financial capital that we think about when we think of capital. But we also have the ecological capital, the resources that we build on. And in this area, we're dependent on the Grand River. Our entire state is dependent on water. We are the steward of 25% of the freshwater surface resource in the world. And then we have the built capital, which is where I work, and that's creating the habitat for people, where we live our lives, like we have our social experiences and allow our businesses to grow, and all of that's creating that experience. And we have the social capital, which is our networks coming together, our educational institutions. So when we look at all of these, we build them together and we start to realize that there's other things that we can look at to solve this issue versus just having to put money into the projects.
Right.
And it solves it from both ends because we're creating career level jobs that then raise the wages, which allow more spendability. And by doing that, we can help people set roots down in the communities to be able to buy houses and raise families and then put more different types of housing in that allows for people to live their life cycle in a social network in an area.
And so this is City of Lansing.
Yes.
Okay. And you talked about MSHA, so the State Housing Authority, and you talked about EGLE, which is the environmental organization. You got labor unions. You got you as as a builder. And what is the city's role in this?
So the city's been a huge support in it too, in helping us make sure, number one, the permitting process is smooth, going through the inspections, but also providing support, understanding that, hey, what can we do to be a part of this? And the next project has RAP grant dollars going into it. It's going to be a little bit bigger building, a 30-unit-ish.
Oh, nice.
We're still designing it. That's going to have some commercial that's going to be in Southwest Lansing. And the land, it's on land bank property again. We've been working with the Southwest Action Group for a few years now to stand this up, and they've got an initiative called Invest Health, which is part of a 66-city cohort, and it's sponsored by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the Reinvestment Fund out of Philadelphia. And it's saying, how do we continue to build that network? So, a lot of our core cities across the state really haven't seen investment in certain pockets of it for 30, 40 years. It's hard to restart that ecosystem. And another group that's come in is the National Coalition for Community Capital. And what they look at is, how do we kind of tighten that investment, keep investment local, and they work with, it's kind of one-off of crowdfunding is the best way to put it, but setting up these local ecosystems that allow the people that live in the communities to invest in projects. So they're tied to the benefit of the project and also have that engagement with the buildings that are in their community. So much like our banking system was at the beginning of the 20th century.
Okay.
Yeah, you ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life?
Yes, of course.
When they're doing the run on the bank, and he's like, well, I can't give you your money because your money's in his tractor. Your money went into his barn. And while it's kind of adjacent, it's a very good analogy, because that's what we're looking at, is how do we invest back in our communities, especially communities that haven't seen a lot of investment in a while, to rebuild that ecosystem. And in turn, that means that investment's managed locally, which means it's going to have much more connection to the neighborhood for a longer period of time.
Okay. So is this kind of collaboration of all of these people putting these projects together? Because you have the one house that is about done, or I forget where you said that. Yeah,
they're doing the trim while we're having this podcast, so it'll be done in a couple months.
Right. Okay. And then you've got your eyes set on this 30-unit plus or minus Southwest Michigan or Lansing multi-tenant housing. My question is this scalable, or are there other people that are doing this? Is this are you forging away, or is this happening in Tennessee and in Utah?
So National Coalition is c3now.org.
Okay.
They are doing this in other cities. But the pieces of this are all over the country right now, and they're all over Michigan. I mean, when you look at, you mentioned up north, I mean, Marquette is an area that I've met with. They've got, out of necessity, a much more local supply chain and local dependency on the businesses because of their geographic location.
Yep.
Another community that I visited not too long ago was Ironwood, Michigan, where they realized their downtown had been struggling, and they had 80 years of declining population. And people that live there said, we have to get families back here, and worked on creating a cool downtown. They got a little bit of grant money, but they also had a lot of the local businesses invest. They created a downtown arts center, and now they have art festivals. And then they had an area where a mine was that they turned into a mountain bike trail that's big across the country right now. So communities are coming together, and Michigan has a bunch of examples. And that network is continuing to connect, and that's what's going to make this state have one of the higher growth population growth as we get to the next census. And I believe that. I mean, when you look at what's happening here, there's just so much exciting stuff going on. We just got to keep telling our stories and letting people know, you know what, Michigan's still affordable to live in. Come here.
Yep.
And the businesses need to say, you know what, we can help with the housing because these tools are available. And Michigan's doing a great job on realizing that housing is an economic driver.
No question.
For communities. And with that comes that social benefit, because people want experience, right? That's the one thing that we learned during COVID. When we had those weeks at home, people realized, you know what? It's kind of nice talking to your neighbor. It's kind of nice being able to walk down the street and be outside during the summer parts of it, where we were able to to have those connections. So by continuing to foster that, we can create that better experience and make Michigan, I already think it's one of the best living experiences in the country, and we can continue to grow on that.
Makes a lot of sense. And, you couple that with some of the success we've had in competing for new jobs.
Yeah.
Right. So bringing in new companies, a lot of them are manufacturing, but if you're going to commit and fight to win a 3,000 person manufacturing facility that's being built from the ground up, you need to house these people.
Yep.
And the infrastructure of people, those deals, it seems like are a lot put together with how you're going to build the factory and, can you get all this done? And then can you get the workers? But, there's childcare and there's, rural broadband and there's housing and there's public transportation and there's school capacities and all the other, like I say, the infrastructure of people. When you said housing is an economic driver, I believe it for those reasons.
Yeah. And the last capital is human capital. So you brought it up, the infrastructure of people. This whole experience is about us, and it's about us being stewards of all of the other capitals and building that experience. And your show name, Michigan Reimagined, right? I mean, we are reimagining to a point, but we're using a lot of tools that have worked in the past. And other communities have done this. We're working with the group CityCraft, and in their New American City Plan that happened down in South Carolina, it was an area that lost a naval base, and they reimagined a 3,500 acre area around that base. But understanding that, okay, we have housing that could be fixed up and be higher quality. We need new housing. They worked on rebuilding that job network around there. So that group is here and part of helping us as well and building that structure around it.
Got it. So it seems like back in the day, a developer would say, this area, my studies show that we need more housing here, so I'm going to buy a plot of land and build houses and sell them and make money as I do it and serve the community that I'm in.
Yeah.
Everything you've talked about for the last 15 minutes or so seems like a ton of organization and connectivity and meetings and, getting people to the table and saying, yes, I can contribute this resource to try to make this whole package go.
Yeah.
Wildly complicated, it seems, to be able to build multiple front doors.
Yeah, well, let's look at the challenge we've been facing. I mean, we've been pretty flatlined on our growth across the state, for decades.
Right.
So, there are developers. You've got areas that grow, and it's easy because the economics, as it's growing, there's more housing. But when you have an area that kind of needs that continued push, it takes the people that live there that call that place home, and that's part of that connection. And that's what this is there's so many people across the state. Lansing, I'm biased because this is my home community, right?
Yep.
That understand that and are working together to say, you know what, we want to grow, we want to thrive, we want to create that experience. We need the jobs to do that. We need the quality housing to do that. We need the social experiences with the restaurants. We need the trails. We need the outdoor experiences. We need the art. We need the culture. So it's all of the different groups that are focused coming together to build that story. And that's really what we need to do, is tell this story and then continue to work towards what works, what doesn't, and have that communication. And that's Michigan's good at that.
Yeah.
And okay. Lansing as a region is good at that. And that's what we need to continue to grow if we want to get that growth band here.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to give a nod to our friends at Good Marketing. Here at Michigan Reimagined, we tell stories of passionate Michiganders doing great things across the state. Today's podcast sponsor takes the art of positive storytelling to a whole new level. The good people at Good Marketing work with organizations across the state that are having a positive impact on the lives of Michigan residents. They help educate communities on the importance of affordable housing, the impact of wildlife and natural resource management, the availability of workforce development and education programs. If it lifts people up and makes communities stronger, then they want to help you spread the word. If your organization needs help communicating the good work that you do, stop by their website at goodmarketing.com. That's GUD marketing.com. So if I'm a listener, I mean, I've got listeners all over the place that, are either interested in wanting to move and get new housing for themselves, or have kids that are coming in that they want to have stick around, but are worried that they're not going to find an affordable place to live, or even investors, people who are like, hey, I'd love to do good with the money that I've earned and make some return on that. How would they follow this story?
So, our website will carry stuff at lansingrealestate.com as we continue with this, but it's really understanding the networks in the different areas, like Southwest Lansing is constantly putting stuff out. And then, as we continue to go through the projects, we'll keep releasing stuff. The city of Lansing has been a huge part of this and staying in contact. So, it's finding that network in the area where you're interested in living. So,
okay.
If you have neighborhoods that you're interested in, find out who the neighborhood association is. Find out where maybe the community centers are in that area, and start talking and plugging into that. And social media right now, it is a little bit easier with things being out there. And really, it's about being involved with the community that you want to move into and understand, does it have the values and the amenities and lifestyle that I'm looking for?
Right. So it's been a little while, but I had the folks from the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission on to talk about their housing study.
Yeah.
And I know they're really good at collecting data and putting it, you have the heat map of not only where housing is needed, but what type of housing specifically is needed in different municipalities. And DeWitt's needs are different than Mason's needs, as Williamston as to Southwest Lansing. Would that be a reasonable resource for them to go and kind of maybe get caught up a little bit on what the needs are, so they can kind of see, because they have numbers as to how many houses they think we need immediately and in the next 10 years and some of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. And there is a shortened version that kind of talks about some of the needs, but that's really looking at where do we need to go. And you can get an idea and a sense from there of what housing is in each area. I'm a data geek, so for me, I love that report. We use it all the time because that's a great baseline for us to understand and see where the housing stock is. And when you go to Lansing Downtown Inc., they've got a great one through the city that's very structured on the housing needs and the housing stock in different parts through Old Town down to Rio Town, so kind of through that middle swath of the city. The East Side neighborhood has a very active organization too. So there is a lot of that information out there. And
got it.
The regional housing partnership that came out of with Tri-County, that study is very comprehensive, and it's giving a lot of tools to our economic development groups like Lansing EDC and LEAP to be able to say, okay, here's where we need to go, and understanding where the jobs are compared to the housing, to say, how do we cut people's commute times? Because we're at that point here where we're looking at, yes, we have the housing shortage that we're working with, but how do we make sure where we're putting it is creating that better experience? Nobody wants to sit in their car for an hour and a half commute. And that's one of the beauties of Michigan is there's not really a lot of areas where you're doing that. I was just out in Philly not too long ago, and 58 minutes to go 7.8 miles.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah, and in Michigan, even down in the Detroit market, it's like, oh man, that commute took an extra 7 minutes. I'm like, wait a minute, we're a little lucky here.
Yes, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And you talk about where the housing is needed, but I think Delta Township is really raising their hand saying, holy moly, we've got these new jobs coming in our community, and we need more housing. And then you have the infrastructure that goes along with that, right? Water and sewer and electric and the traffic, and you get the CATA at the table and try to get public transportation to help some of these folks out. So there's a lot of people that need to sit at this table.
It's it's everybody in the community. And our community does a great job with the rural and the suburban and urban townships and cities and municipalities, understanding that we have to preserve our agriculture. We have to make sure our infrastructure is being utilized correctly. And we're quite lucky for how those conversations occur. I know sometimes it looks like there's some contention, but overall, when you think about our region as a whole, we are a close-knit family. And I think the state's like that too. You go to all the regions, I'm on the State Home Builders Board too, and we have our board meetings, and you hear about what's going on in the community. It's really a burst of energy for me to realize, okay, yes, every day we're dealing with the policy, we're dealing with the supply chains and all of these other issues that we have. But at the same time, everybody's like, we're going to get through this because Michigan's strong and we have a great place to live. And the people that are here have been here at least a few years, and sometimes multi-generations, that say, this is our home, and we are going to keep making it better for future generations. And that's something that I think gets missed in the bigger cities sometimes, where there's a lot more policy and a lot more governance that needs to go, where here it really is people.
It's personal.
It's personal here in Michigan.
Right.
And to me, that's the exciting part.
I couldn't agree more. Well, if nothing else, I, as the host, and hopefully listeners here who maybe are like, I've got a house, I'm happy with my house, but I'm empathetic, I'm aware, I keep hearing that housing is a challenge. If nothing else, take from it that there are people like Brent Forsberg helping herd the cats, along with a million other people that are a part of this, that we have brains in this state that are working tirelessly to find ways to get through this time in our history and sleep well at night knowing that your kids maybe have a new place to go because they're here in Michigan.
Absolutely. And, if you're a business owner or, in an executive position at a business, think about what is it that having more housing or having those people in the community, and talk with the local groups and talk with the developers in the area about what can we do to all come together, because even having the voice and having the ideas come together, it's amazing what can come off of that.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Having open conversations and trying to find solutions instead of pointing fingers and complaining help unearth, some of the solutions that haven't been thought of before.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody has ideas or things that have worked in their business that can be adapted. So it's amazing getting those conversations, what can come out of them. Right
on. Well, Brent, it's been a great conversation. Why don't you plug your website again and any other social handles that you might have? Or
yeah, so Forsberg Real Estate is our Facebook page. And then I have BrentForsberg.com, which has some of information on education side. And then Lansing Real Estate is the company's website. And we post things on there from the meetings and stuff as well. So if you want to get involved, reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you and see how you can get involved in the community.
Wonderful. Well, I'm very proud to have had you on. I'm refreshed by the conversation, knowing that there's solutions that are being creatively put together. It doesn't surprise me, but it's always nice to hear what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking to the president of TA Forsberg, Mr. Brent Forsberg. Check out lansingrealestate.com to get updates on what we're doing to create more housing affordability in the state of Michigan and in Lansing in particular.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'd love to give a final shout out to all my loyal sponsors. We have Wagoner Financial, Triterra Environmental, Good Marketing, Keller Williams Advantage and Team, Michigan Rise, and the attorneys at Foster Swift. All fantastic people worth the call. And if you found the show as a one-off, I want to remind you to follow and subscribe to Michigan Reimagined on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and pretty much anywhere you find your podcast. This is Chris Buck from Michigan Reimagined signing off.